stayed in that movie. He projected a Force ghost over interstellar distances that was physical enough to give Leia a kiss on the cheek, and was still able to wield the Force well enough to do a whole lot of damage to the First Order forces. Consider what he could have done if he wasn't expending all of that energy to project that power over interstellar distances. Consider. What if he'd actually come out of his hole and was there physically, but knew they turned him into a friggin' coward because they're cowardly themselves. They would not. They don't. They would never possess. Wouldn't possess the courage to fight for what they believe in. Really. They will whine about it when people give pushback like this video. You know, whine about it and talks about toxic fandom, but they don't really do anything about it. They just keep doing what they're doing and complain when people don't like it. Right? And I'm going to keep using, since I'm going with Star Wars, keep going with Star Wars. Han Solo and Leia. You have the scoundrel who's kind of selfish, but tends to do the right thing in the form of Han Solo. Right? He is inspired by Luke's innocence and Leia's resolve and love of freedom. Comes back, helps him destroy the Death Star, does the right thing. Hooks up with Leia, they're a power couple, and they have a kid. Well, they didn't have a kid in the movie, but eventually they have a kid. Yeah, nice happy ending. Yeah, I mean, it touched the heart of the elder nerd. It wasn't so elder back then, though. Okay, so what do? They have to project their view of how people should be. They have to make these characters unhappy and miserable because they're unhappy and miserable. They're offended about this, that, and the other thing. They really don't have. They're not inspired by anything. They are driven by hate and vengefulness and spite. So of course they have to ruin anybody that's happy, even if they're fictional characters. So they turn these people, this scoundrel with a heart of gold, and this strong female character that is really a strong female character, where it draws her strength from her compassion. And they turn them into a couple of failed parents that pawn their kid off to be raised by somebody else, and who are divorced, right? Because they couldn't stand a happy ending. And it's just spite. It's hate. That's all it is. Right, and then of course, like I said, they're just the deconstruction of Spock. I didn't watch it, but I understand on an episode of Strange New Worlds, which I probably will get around to watching. I watched the first episode, and it wasn't too bad by today's standards. They kind of make Kirk look like an idiot. He gets the Farragut shot out from underneath him, and they just have to co-opt one of the greatest episodes, my personal favorite episode of the original, Balance of Terror. They just had to co-opt that because they couldn't even let me have my favorite episode. They couldn't let me keep that. I suppose next season they'll do something to fuck up the Doomsday Machine. And I really think this is just driven by hate. They will sit there and tell you they're trying to do social enlightenment and educate people and promote peace and love and acceptance, except they don't accept it. They're not accepting people. They don't because they don't want the fans to have what they did, to have these icons. I mean, I had a good family life growing up. My dad died when I was young, but I had uncles and older brothers and aunts and just and things like I had a really tough title. I guess in my other video, talk about a strong female character, my mother, right? But the crew of the Enterprise was kind of like another bunch of role models for me. Right? They were just good, decent people. They had flaws. They disagreed occasionally. But they were good, decent people. Right? You could learn about leadership and friendship and acceptance from that show. Because the characters demonstrated these traits. They didn't sit there and wag their finger and tell you have to accept stuff. They accepted each other and they accepted other people. And when it did get educational, it was done in the context of a good, solid story. Let there be your last battlefield. You talk about, right? And for the people that don't know the episode names, that was the one where they had Frank Gorshin was half black and half white, and then they had this other guy that was black on one side, that was black and white on opposite sides from Frank Gorshin. And that was their only difference. Right? One was black on the white side, the other one was black on the left side, but they were both had black and white faces split down the middle. Now, scientifically, I mean, I don't know how that would work, I mean, when it comes to the genetics, but the thing it is, they destroyed each other over that minor difference, and that was used to illustrate how stupid it was, right? It was a good educational episode, I wouldn't say preaching acceptance, right? Well, yeah, preaching acceptance, and how stupid it was to be racist and non-accepting. But it was a solid story. It was interesting. And you didn't come out of there and say, yeah, you didn't come out of there and say, I feel like you just watched a video in high school health class. Excuse me. Shouldn't have done that on camera. Yeah, this is raw, folks. Anyway, I'm begging people. I'm begging the filmmakers. Now, also, with the amount of money that's being lost to wokeness, some people in the entertainment industry are getting the message, and they're stopping wokening. You know, the latest Spider-Man movie, at least not much wokeness, and did very well. But you're still getting the Eternals, and the Eternals. You have to be an old elder nerd to remember the Eternals, the original Eternals comic book with the classic artwork by Jack Kirby and John Buscema. Right? Great premise. These were genetically engineered people, genetically engineered by an alien race to protect her from another alien race that might come and take us, right? And might come across problems. And these superpowered beings were the basis for the Greek gods. Cool. I wasn't a big Eternals fan or the comic book. I had a few of the comic books in my collection, but right. But they take this obscure comic book with a really cool premise, and they take that premise, but the premise becomes unimportant. How did they market that movie? Well, it's the most inclusive and diverse Marvel movie yet. And they were surprised when it bombed. Right? Because people said, "Oh man, I'm going to go pay, what is it, 15? I haven't been to a movie in a theater for years. I'm going to pay 15, 20 bucks, what is it now, to see a movie because it's diverse and inclusive? Going to take my kids to see that? 15 minutes into it, they'll be on their phones playing the video game of the week." So I guess I'm just going to stop now. I've been ranting for long, but I think you get the message. Writers, and whether you do novels, screenplays, whatever. If you want to have gay characters, if you want to have female black characters that are actually males trapped in a female body, or if you want some, 2-foot hermaphrodite dwarf with a ring in his nose, fine. But how about just coming up with a character, your own character with those traits, and writing a good story around it? How about actually having a little imagination and creativity yourself instead of going out and getting a character that is already known and loved and bastardizing? Let's call it what it is. It's bastardization of these franchises and these characters. Like I said, I'm not a Whovian. I like the old black and white Doctor Who's quite a bit, right? But it made a female Doctor. Okay. It completely goes against everything that had come before it. How about creating a show about time travel? I mean, you can do a lot with time travel. It doesn't have to be a Doctor Who clone. It doesn't have to be like DC's Time Masters. But if you want a female character that is, along the lines, in that same, that kind of same archetype as Doctor Who, I mean, write your own story, create your own universe, create your own characters, more fun, right? And try to do something yourself that will be as lasting as these franchises. Okay, that's it. I think I'm done ranting. I'll probably think of some other stuff that I wanted to say. But these are going to be unscripted. I'm just going to go on, and I'm just going to go on about stuff, and we'll see what happens. But remember, imagination wins. And I bid you goodbye.